Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Phil Louridas of Williams-Sonoma and Mark Stelzner from IAHR. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're talking about benefits outsourcing today. Phil, can you start off by talking about your current outsourcing solution and how that was justified with a hard dollar amount?
We went to Empyrean as our vendor that we worked with, and they outsourced. They put together an online website for us to use for enrollment purposes. They also have a call center that's devoted with a group of representatives that are devoted to our company and to our benefit plans. In terms of the ROI and the business case, it was really an iterative process. And we started out looking for how we could get some hard dollar and soft dollar savings. And one thing that we learned throughout the process is that it doesn't have to be a one-time shot at getting the approval. And so we worked with our executive committee members and our executive team throughout to get their feedback on the business case and the ROI proposal. Worked with our chief information officer and our CFO to understand what would be the best way to position the solution and the ROI business case.
Mark, what are the key components to any HR transformational initiative?
I think it has to start with being somewhat insatiably curious. And so what we find leads to much success is to start by deconstructing one's existing environment. So many organizations believe they know how the work's being done today. We like to write it down. In Williams-Sonoma's case, they actually hired a graphic artist to represent visually the good, bad, and ugly related to current systems, technologies, and processes. And we find that by codifying the existing environment into an easily consumable representation, graphically or through a narrative, that it becomes one, easy to socialize, two, you can start with change management without necessarily the need to move to a new technology. So you start to identify opportunities for process enhancement, for policy improvement, where folks are enabled today throughout the entire life cycle for a transformative initiative to really infuse change throughout the environment. The second thing, as Phil added earlier, is to start to socialize these notions and to gain feedback. And what I mean by curiosity is to ask those who have successfully secured funding through other initiatives, whether they be in finance or information technology, marketing, in the Retail Operations Center, to find out what truly gains attention, what gains those precious dollars, and what's the best use of both opportunity costs and those precious fiscal elements that are certainly difficult to unleash for any initiative right now.
So talk about your approach to communication to increase transparency and overall company success in regards to dealing with your vendor community.
It was really important that we got to know the people who were going to be working with us on a day-to-day basis. And not only for them to get to know us, and that culture fit was really important, outside of sort of the sales team that came out. The other thing that was really important in terms of communication is we asked them for what the best practices were and didn't stop with telling them what we wanted. We basically said, don't ask us what we want, tell us what's the best practice and tell us what works well for other clients and tell us, in your experience, what's going to break when we ask for it. And we'll push back on what we can or can't do and what fits into our culture. But we really wanted to change the dialogue from you're selling us on something and we're buying it to let's work together and partner and think of the best solution and the best possible outcome.
And I think what was fascinating about the Williams-Sonoma instance is Williams-Sonoma didn't pursue an RFP. They went through what's called a facilitated selection, which is a series of increasingly deep and meaningful conversations to allow for that mutual discovery, because there is no perfect system, there is no perfect technology, there is no perfect individual. And so the idea is to demystify the solutions, to create an environment where it's safe for a provider to say no or to challenge the working assumptions. And to their credit, Williams-Sonoma was quite open, as Phil just described, to any feedback, to really putting fresh eyes on any process that was in scope, and to allow the vendor community to really bring their best practice as they define it through their own eyes. And I think what's very challenging, though, in today's environment is this notion of a servant culture where providers just want to get a list of requirements and then say yes, 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 yes. And I think in Williams-Sonoma's instance, what was fantastic is we had full-day workshops where the finalists were brought in and we sat down and Williams-Sonoma presented to them, here's our vision, here's how we define success, here's what we're trying to achieve. Now take everything you know, all the other large or complex organizations like us that you've supported, and lay out a path for us. and challenge us, right? Really challenge us to think about any preconceived notions, as Phil described, that we might have. And let's get above that and beyond that and mutually agree on how success should be defined collaboratively and cohesively and through a sustainable relationship for the long term. It was quite an amazing process.
Do you think the success with that approach was unique because of the culture at Williams-Sonoma and what they were open to, or is that something that could easily apply to other organizations?
I think it can apply to other organizations, but you have to start with the mindset that Williams-Sonoma brought to the table is, listen, we're not the experts in this. We haven't put fresh eyes on this in a number of years, and so we're looking for an infusion of knowledge and insight and experience from the market that certainly is transferable to any enterprise right now who's trying to seek best or better solutions from their provider community. So I have no reason to believe, and we've certainly had other experiences like that, where the facilitated selection works, because otherwise the alternative is, Phil and his team and his peers in Williams-Sonoma are spending an inordinate or disproportionate amount of time reading cut and paste perfunctory RFP responses that really have no correlation to driving and facilitating a sustainable outcome for the organization. And so we would love to destroy that and really see more thought leadership like Williams-Sonoma brought to the table.
A two-parted question here. Mm-hmm. With regards to Williams-Sonoma and leadership, was there any resistance to this approach, this facilitated selection? No. And are there any learnings there if an organization does work in an environment where an RFP approach is traditional and sort of expected?
To your question about culture on a higher level, there's nothing about our company culture that necessarily says that this approach was the best fit. But I think that as a team, when we thought about what we were looking for and how we were going to get there, this approach made the most sense. And we were willing, and Mark was able to help us get there, to think outside the box and not say there's only one way to find the best vendor.
And I'd say, building on that for clarity, you still get a proposal. And so for those that are worried about risk or documentation or some memorialization of what the provider promised so that you can hold them hostage against that if something were to fall apart at a later date, we still ask, of course, of the service provider community that they take everything they've learned over this very detailed mutual discovery workshop and actually rationalize that into something that's consumable and still respond to the security questionnaire and the architecture questionnaire so we can certainly satisfy any requirements across other stakeholders in the organization. And providers cheer at the initial notion of not having to respond to an RFP, and then they realize, but our machinery and our muscle memory internally is on responding to an RFP. So it's challenging for some, but I will say that those that embraced it, and certainly in your instance, they differentiate themselves almost instantly because they themselves bring forward a curiosity, the same type of curiosity that we were speaking to a little bit earlier in the conversation.
So back to outsourcing in general, with specific regards to benefits, of course, what are some of the expected and unexpected benefits of outsourcing?
Expected benefit is that your team can focus on different work rather than worrying about answering phone calls or responding to emails. I think one of the unexpected benefits was that we're able to work with a partner that can help us think about how we're going to execute against our benefit strategy. And if we do change benefit plans going forward, we're going to need someone to help facilitate that. So I think that was one of the unexpected benefits.
I would say another unexpected benefit in the instance of Williams-Sonoma was that people aren't thinking about benefits administration. They're not thinking about benefits enrollment. This is just a natural part of my work and life cycle within the halls of your organization, right? So I don't wake up every morning and be like, oh my gosh, it's spring or it's fall, I cannot wait for annual enrollment. And so at the end of the day, the fact that it's a non-event, that there's no noise in the system, that people are making good decisions based on the available options that are presented, in some respects, no excitement is the right type of excitement to derive from these types of solutions. So
makes a lot of sense. Thank you both.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
For World at Work TV, I'm Allison Avalos.